The Conjuring movie universe is expanding once again with the release of The Nun II, its 9th entry and the first since 2021. Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host Brett Murphy, and for today's video I have a brand new ranking for you all, as I am going to be ranking all 9 of the Conjuring universe movies. The Conjuring universe started back in 2013 with the release of the very first Conjuring movie, and over the span of that decade, this universe has already grossed $2.2 billion at the worldwide box office. Though the reviews have been fairly mixed on a case-by-case basis, there's no denying that this universe has been dominating the horror side of the box office. So how does this latest entry stack up to the 8 that came before it? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to find out. Of course, as always, I like to reiterate that this list is my own. It is 110% subjective. It is my own personal thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and opinions. And that is why it is oh so important for you to leave your own ranking down in the comments below. As a last note before we hop into the ranking itself, I just wanted to let you all know that I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my ranking videos, and there are well over 150 videos currently on that playlist for you to enjoy, so if rankings are your thing, then be sure to check that out, and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And so without further ado, let's hop right into things. Number 9. Annabelle. So without being too harsh, this movie is pretty much garbage. There are very few redeeming qualities, from the lazy writing to the absolute lack of scares. I mean, unless you find a camera slowly moving in on an inanimate doll's face scary, then there's pretty much nothing in this movie that's gonna give you a fright. There are 2 good scenes in the entire movie, and that's the one where the little girl runs across the hall, bursts through the door, and is a full-grown woman. That one was pretty good, pretty inventive, I enjoy it. And then the sequence down in like the basement of their apartment building where she gets chased all the way up back through, that one was moderately well executed, but aside from that, this one is a major stinker. And by far the worst in the Conjuring universe. Number 8. The Curse of La Llorona. Apart from how nightmarish it is to try and pronounce this movie's name time and time again, there isn't really much in the scare department for this one either. And maybe that's just me or others like me who frequently watch horror movies and have just become desensitized to this kind of thing. And there has been quite a bit of debate over the last few years as to whether this movie is actually a part of the Conjuring universe or not, but look, it was advertised as such and literally has a character that is the same actor and has the same name as he did in the first Annabelle movie, so whether you like it or not, they wrote it and released it as if it were connected to the Conjuring universe, so it's on this list today and still connected in my opinion. I like the design of La Llorona, and I'm probably pronouncing that horrendously wrong, and I'm sure someone will correct me in the comments. I also like the mild exploration of the heritage and the history behind the character. I think that cultural stuff is actually pretty interesting, and that was done okay. But aside from that, the only things this movie really has to offer is Linda Cardellini in the main role and Tuco Salamanca playing whatever this character was. The character wasn't all that fascinating. I just love the guy as Tuco, so seeing him in a big movie like this was cool. But aside from those very few positives, this movie offers up nothing new or refreshing. Number 7. The Nun II. Boy oh boy, I really wish I could have put this one higher because, truth be told, early, mostly positive reviews actually had me kind of looking forward to this one. So I went in moderately optimistic, having not loved or hated the first Nun movie, but it seemed to be unanimously agreed upon that this was an improvement over the original. And I have to say that I wholeheartedly disagree with that. Though I don't hate this movie either, I certainly like it less than the first one. The only positives I can really give it is that I like the leads in this movie. I like Sister Irene, played by Tessa Farmiga. I liked Sister Deborah, played by Storm Reed, and I liked Maurice as, well, I mean, I guess he was Frenchie in the first one, didn't go by Frenchie in this one, he only went by Maurice, played by Jonas Bloquet. The movie picks up a little bit in the final act, but the pacing is dreadful. This movie is just about 2 hours long, and you absolutely feel it. There were definitely more than a few scenes where I was like, there was no need for this to be in here at all. This movie very easily could have been shaved down by like 20-30 minutes. And that's where my main issues come in with the movie, is the pacing, and it feels like there are so many subplots and so many little scenes that just weren't necessary for this kind of movie, because it didn't make me like it anymore. So I feel like if they were just removed, I actually might have liked it more, because the pacing would have been picked up a tick. Maybe this was just me, but I feel like Valak, or the nun, was hardly in this movie at all. And I guess as a final closing note, I actually also did like the young little actress that played Sophie and her mother. I actually felt that they did add to the movie, and I liked the stuff with them. Really, this movie had the opportunity to be a lot more, to learn from the mistakes of the past, and it simply didn't. Number 6, The Nun. Pretty much has the exact same positives that I had with the Nun II, with Tessa Farmiga playing Sister Irene, Jonas Bloquet playing Frenchie or Maurice, and I like Demian Bichir as the priest in this movie. Those 3 leads I thought were solid, and the only other thing that I can give this movie, aside from the fact that I love Valak as a character, as a now horror icon, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who doesn't know who the Nun is, and I loved the setting. That was by far my biggest positive with this movie. This old abandoned Romanian abbey was so cool. It was so fun to explore, and I thought that there was a lot of inventive set pieces in here. It's one of my favorite horror movie settings in recent memory. Number 5, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. I get the reason that they gave this movie this name, but my god, this name is so damn dumb. They just could have called it The Conjuring 3. Either way, the positives with this one are obvious, and that's Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson. The movie isn't directed by James Wan, and that is very noticeable, very apparent if you ask me, but it is still pretty solidly written, and again, you have those lead performances that are absolutely carrying it, but it is 100% the weakest of the Conjuring trilogy, and that's because it lacks any of the scare factor, any of the atmosphere that the first 2 movies had. The fact that it ends up just being like this witch in the end, and there's no real horror in here at all. It's more of like a murder mystery thriller thing. And it was fine that they tried this, and they tried to change up the pacing and take the franchise into a new direction. I don't mind that at all. You know, you never know unless you try. But for me, this turn didn't work as well as it could have, and I'm sure not as well as they would have liked. Number 4, Annabelle Comes Home. I'm sure I probably have this one a lot higher on my list than most people do, and I'll explain why. Very simply put, I like the 3 leads, the 3 young ladies who really put this movie on their backs. Though their performances aren't 110% convincing all the time, I think they're at about a good 90%. I mean, I genuinely feared for them. I was scared that they were just gonna kill them off and we'd never see them again. Though they did play it mostly safe, the other side of the coin is the fact that it introduced so many new demons/monsters that I loved. I loved the design of them. I loved getting to finally explore and expand on the Warren's like haunted room. I loved the ferryman. I loved like the werewolf demon thing. I loved the bride, even though it was just like a copy of La Llorona. And of course, you have the iconic Annabelle in here too. Is it perfect? No, far from it. But is it a lot of fun to watch? Yeah, and it actually made me kind of want more spin-offs to explore these other new cool demons even more. I really would love for them to just stop making the same old, like another Nun sequel, another Annabelle sequel, and actually just start picking and choosing all sorts of new things out of the Warren's room. That to me is a lot more interesting for expanding on this universe rather than just sequel after sequel. Number 3, The Conjuring 2. There's definitely going to be more than a few people who disagree with this one. Based on the last time that I did this list, when the last Conjuring movie came out, I believe, a lot of people actually have The Conjuring 2 in first place. And the reason that I don't, despite me loving pretty much everything about this movie, it's got the atmosphere, it's got the eeriness, it brought us the Nun, it brought us the Crooked Man, who was all sorts of awesome aside from the like occasional janky CGI. I loved Bill Wilkins, he had some really, really awesome solid jump scares. And again, James Wan is just a magnificent horror director. This guy gets it, and he brings his A+++ game here. There are some top-notch scares throughout this whole movie. You really feel for this family, you feel their terror, you feel their fear. That is expressed so damn well. It comes across very naturally. But for me, despite me loving characters like the Nun or like the Crooked Man, at least at the time and coming off of the first Conjuring movie, it feels just a little too whimsical, if that makes sense. It almost feels more Insidious, another franchise that was kicked off by James Wan, and less like the first Conjuring where it was like actual spirits and a witch, and it was just far more believable and far more rooted in reality, and I think this one pulled away from that a little bit in some ways that I just didn't absolutely love. So aside from that stuff though, which might just be a me thing, it kind of appears to be, but this is my list, so for today The Conjuring 2 is going to be in third place. Number 2, Annabelle Creation. This movie 100,000,000% belongs on every single sequels that surpass their originals list, sequels that improve on their originals in every single possible conceivable way. I honestly think this is definitely one of the best sequels in recent memory. If you recall, the first Annabelle movie was way back at the very bottom of the list. Annabelle Creation belongs here in the runner-up spot. I adore this movie. I find that there are moments in this movie that are genuinely scary, like legitimately nightmare-inducing. I think that pretty much everything in this movie was executed to near perfection. I loved following the perspectives of these young orphan girls. They were in this big house that also had this like barn and a few other areas to explore, so it never felt too enclosed, too claustrophobic. There were areas to expand, and there are just so many flawless sequences of pure dread. And also some exquisite body horror in here too that I really appreciated. Is it in the first place spot? No, obviously not. It's in the runner-up spot, but I will tell you that for me personally at least, it was pretty damn close. Number 1, The Conjuring. I'm just gonna be straight up with you all. If this movie isn't my favorite horror movie of all time, it's in the top 3 easily. From these stellar performances from Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga to the honestly also just as superb performances from the main family, except for the father. I feel like that guy's barely in the movie at all. But the children and the mother are all wonderful. Everything about this movie is everything I love about horror. It feels claustrophobic, it is tense, the atmosphere is masterful, and there are so many bits and pieces in here, especially in the whole second half of the movie, that are truthfully horrifying. Like my legit nightmare. Like I don't know what I would do, but it wouldn't be pretty if I was ever in a situation like any of these throughout this movie. James Wan again proves why he is one of the best to ever do it in this genre. Sure, now it might seem a little corny, a little cheesy, and maybe it was back then, but honestly I feel like it's just because we've gotten so many of these Conjuring universe movies and so many other horror movies that were directly inspired by this original Conjuring. But for me, this movie is still so awesome, so powerful, so scary, and still to this day the best of the Conjuring universe. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my ranking. While you're at it, don't forget to let me know how you would have ranked all 9 of the Conjuring universe movies. If you're a movie lover whatsoever, then my channel is the place to be for you. Be it rankings like this one, top 10 videos, tier videos, versus videos, I have it all and so much more, with plenty going on behind the scenes at all times and coming your way soon. And we are currently closing in on 1,000 videos on the channel for you to enjoy. So if you enjoyed this particular video, then be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if any of that sounds like it's right for you and you want to see more from me, then smash that subscribe button right now. While you're at it, don't forget to ring that little bell icon. That way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe. Thank you so much for watching, and that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you. And while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.